How we heat our homes is going to change forever and soon. If you have an old gas boiler, we're going to have to change it because, well, gas is going to run out. All fossil fuels will do one day. So why not go green now and decarbonise how you heat your home? EV News Daily at the weekend. Welcome to the show. My name is Martin Lee, and this show isn't just about electric cars, but also things like a bit of solar, some storage, and today we're talking heat pump technology and going green with home heating. Now, back in the 80s, we had overnight Economy 7, cheap rate that would then charge up storage heaters, which would let out heat during the day, but by the evening, when you wanted it, it was cold, they'd be cold. It was terrible technology. Things luckily have moved on. In all of my adult life, I've always rented or owned homes with a gas boiler, probably gas cooking as well. But I recently found out that 17 million people in the UK, million homes in the UK, use a gas boiler, and 1.5 million of them every year get replaced. So that's an even higher percentage of all the people who drive cars and buy new ones every year. That seems to me opportunity is ripe to decarbonise our home heating. But what is heat pump technology? We're going to find out today. My buddy Nick Ramo from the EV Nick YouTube channel and myself were invited a couple of months ago now down to have a look inside a secret research facility. Octopus Energy have this warehouse outside of London. You'd never know from looking at the outside, but inside they've built two complete, legit detached houses. One to 1970s standards and one to modern standards. And otherwise, they are real houses. They've got bricks and mortar and roofs and windows and heating, lighting, plaster. They're furnished, beds, sofas, a fitted kitchen. They are exactly as a normal home would be, and they can use that in a controlled environment with their engineers and their team to look at how things like insulation and other variables affect home heating so that when heat pumps get rolled out, they are ready for action. So we're going to find out what's inside that incredible facility today. We're going to find out how heat pumps actually work and get energy out of the outside and bring it into your home, how much they cost, and what's the installation going to be like? How difficult will that be? Nick and I spoke to John Szymek, the CEO of Octopus Energy Services, to find out more. And I started by asking John why we've got to bin the boilers.
So it's unquestionable that we need to decarbonise heating in the UK in order to reach net zero. We've got over 20 million gas boilers in operation in domestic homes across the UK, producing a huge amount of carbon emissions. Heat pumps for us are the right technology to decarbonise very, very quickly. They run off of electricity, which is increasingly generated from renewable sources, and they turn 1 unit of energy into a heat pump into as much as 4 units of energy out. So they're super, super efficient. You never get that sort of efficiency with a technology that burns a fossil fuel. In most instances, the retrofit process is relatively straightforward in the typical homes in the UK, which is what we're now targeting and what you can see between us here. We can bring the installation process down to a couple of days, and that is the installation of an entire renewable heating system.
Okay, we'll get onto heat pumps specifically in a second. I've got a lot of questions I know you want to ask, but first of all, if our listeners and viewers can hear some noise in the background, it's because this is very much a work in progress. Tell us about this building. You barely moved in, a bunch of building work happening we can't talk about back there, or maybe you can. Tell us about what's happening here.
Yeah, so this is a £10 million investment. This is a centre of excellence really for renewable heating and low carbon heating. So we've got a combination of things going on here. We've got demonstrations of technology and how these technologies work, so we can talk to people like yourselves and explain these, and to your viewers as well. We've got a training centre at the core of this location where we've developed our own heat pump training, so we can train engineers who are making a racket in the background currently. So we bring people in from various different entry points from the industry, from relatively inexperienced to fairly experienced with heating solutions, upskill them to become heating engineers. And we've also got an R&D facility here as well, so we're talking about how we test technologies, how we tweak and optimise those for the UK market and for our consumers. So it's a combination of those things.
So you built basically 2 houses in this warehouse unit. How many? What's the difference between the 2 houses, and why have you built 2?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've built 2 3-bed houses, typical size, and we've built one that's a sort of 1970s era, brick-built cavity wall property, and we've built a more modern sort of 2000 plus era, timber frame, very well insulated house. The reason that we've done these is because they present slightly different considerations when you're thinking about how you would install a heat pump or a low carbon heating system. And they really are live training rigs for engineers. The meters are under the stairs where they would be. We've been no concessions for how you would carry out an installation in a real home. So our engineers are coming to these properties. They're able to carry out a full survey like you would in a consumer's home, design a solution that's appropriate for the property, and install it. And then we uninstall it, and then we do that process again, and we just keep practicing to optimise as much as possible.
So you've not made the way these houses are built any different to what it would be in traditional sort of day-to-day living?
Absolutely not. No, they're built to building regulations, standards, of their era. So yeah, exact replicas.
Now, a lot of people I would think of Octopus before I knew as the company who send me a bill for my electricity and gas. Increasingly, the company would come around and maybe put a charger on my wall, and even I would lease an EV with your business there. But do you think people might be surprised to hear that you are investing so much money in this kind of facility to train the people who are going to be fitting these heat pumps in houses? Some would say that's not really your job, is it? Or is it the job of an energy company?
Well, so the business that I look after, Octopus Energy Services, currently has about 500 engineers deployed across the UK. We fit 10,000 smart meters every week. We fit an increasing volume of chargers, both domestic and commercially, and charging infrastructure. And a low carbon heating solution is the obvious technology that we need to install in order to tackle climate change, and that is a real focus for our group. So I don't think it's any surprise to us, certainly internally, why this wouldn't be an obvious choice. Everything we do is on that theme, as you've rightly said. We generate renewable energy, we sell renewable energy, we lease electric vehicles, we install smart meters and charging infrastructure, we install low carbon heating solutions. For us it's it's fairly natural.
So does Octopus see this as one of the single biggest things that you can do to reduce your carbon emissions?
Yeah, in terms of reducing UK's carbon emissions is critically important. Domestic heating in the UK is contributing nearly as much as transportation. It's a huge problem that needs to be solved.
So me and Martin will come across this all the time, which is people saying that hydrogen is a better solution in the UK. We've already got boilers, but Octopus, you've decided to go down the heat pump route. And you run basically a myth-busting class here as well, I believe.
We do. Well, so heat pump technology is available now. We have installed in the UK thousands and thousands of heat pumps. We will increasingly be installing thousands and thousands more, and hundreds of thousands more, hopefully. The technology is available. It's available now. It can reuse, as I say, it can use renewable energy to generate heat and hot water for a building. Hydrogen has probably got a place in other applications, but we don't think it's the right solution for domestic heating across the UK.
And how much is this going to cost me as an end user to get this installed?
Yeah, so every installation is priced for the particular customer, a particular home, and sized appropriately for that property and that customer's needs. Real drive here and focus on bringing down the cost. We would expect over a period of time to get to the same price as a gas boiler exchange, maybe within 18 months to 2 years.
And is that without government grant or with a government grant?
In the short term, there's a government subsidy becoming available early part of next year, which will help bridge that gap. We won't be stopping there though with our drive to reduce costs. We hope very much that grant will be phased out over a couple of years, and as I say, we can kind of really drive to bring those costs down to similar to gas boiler exchange. Yeah.
Now, I say it all the time to my podcast listeners, I repeat it so many times. I knew what a kilowatt hour was before I bought an EV, but I didn't really care. It was my home electricity bill. Since I got an EV, and now solar panels and solar thermal, and I'm with Octopus, and so I have a card in my pocket that I charge the car with. That means when I'm out and about, that bill goes on my home electricity bill. You rethink energy, right? But I know that I'm an early adopter, bit of a nerd, but everybody is going to have to stop driving petrol cars one day, and we're going to have to stop using gas one day. It's just a fact because they're non-renewables. Why is the technology in a heat pump, as we start to think about our home energy usage, the energy that goes in our car, the energy that we use for heating and hot water, all becomes the same thing? Why are these so good and so efficient in terms of the technology inside what a heat pump is?
Yeah, we touched on it earlier. So a heat pump fundamentally takes ambient heat or warmth out of the air, and it converts that into heat energy that heats your hot water for your heating system and your hot water needs inside the property. These heat pumps currently can produce an efficiency 3.5 to 4 times. So 1 unit of energy in produces 3.5 to 4 units of energy out. You can't achieve that with a fossil fuel boiler or combustion process. If you put 1 unit of energy into a gas boiler, you'll at best maybe get 0.9 units of energy out the other side of it. So they're really magic, they're generating, efficiency. It's by far and away the most efficient technology that you can use.
So I understand they take heat out of the air. Now I kind of know the answer to this already because we've got an air conditioner at home with a heat pump in. So this week, we're filming this in winter, it was -1 outside, my air conditioner was blowing hot air at me. Yeah. But for anyone watching this thinking, so does it have to be hot outside to extract heat from the air? Do they work when it's cold?
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, where you look at the deployment of heat pumps internationally, they're prevalent in Scandinavian countries that have much colder climates than ours. Heat pumps absolutely can work down to negative temperature conditions. We've got pictures of customers that have taken, with snow on the top of their heat pump and they're, 21 degrees room temperature inside their home. So absolutely, the UK climate is not a challenge for heat pumps.
With the way Octopus works with energy, are these heat pumps going to be working with your adaptive tariffs like Agile, always capitalising on the cheapest price points, or are you just going to see these running all the time 24/7?
The beauty of a heat pump is you can be flexible with when you use it. It's not like a gas boiler, you don't need to turn that on at that particular precise moment that you want to generate hot water out of your taps. You can use a heat pump more flexibly to charge hot water in a hot water cylinder and use that at a time that you want to, and heat your home over a longer period of time more slowly. So absolutely, and our Agile tariff adapts, adjusts the price based on the price on the grid and also the carbon intensity, and you can use those signals to control when you operate a heat pump. It gives you much more flexibility than most other heating systems. So you're quite right. Yeah.
So rather than just having a standard hot, really hot temperature in your house, you're opening your windows, you've made it too hot, you've just got a cosy heat pretty much 24/7 in your home. And is this going to require underfloor heating installed at everyone's home, or can we just run it off a traditional wet radiator system?
No, you can definitely run it off a wet radiator system. Part of the survey process is to determine whether you've got enough emitters in your property to work properly with a heat pump. That's typically the case. Where not, we might be talking about changing maybe a single panel radiator to a double panel radiator in some of the rooms that you use more frequently, or some of the larger rooms in the property. But the cost of upgrading radiators relative to the cost of the installation is fairly insignificant. It's really not a barrier to just having a heat pump. It's just part of the installation process, and we'll do that at the same time.
Now, before we came out, we're filming this in November, December in the UK. Pretty cold here, right? Before I came out today, I looked at my smart meter on top of my microwave, and Octopus had billed me £30 for my gas last month. That's for a month in the winter in the UK, and we got heating and hot water. And it just seems to me, like, we're not rich, but it seems ridiculously cheap. 30 quid a month to heat my house on gas, right? So, whereas my electricity bill is more. I have an EV, I get that. Yep. So there might be people watching this thinking, but isn't gas really cheap to buy? What happens in the market to make it that cheap?
Yeah. Gas is artificially cheap in the UK.
How come?
Typically the costs and the levies that are associated with carbon generation in the UK are applied to electricity bills and not to the gas tariffs. So electricity is artificially expensive, gas is artificially cheap. There needs to be a rebalancing of those costs and those levies and taxes across the two fuels to better reflect the fact that you can have renewable energy, and using renewable electricity is a better choice than burning fossil fuels and using gas.
Wow.
And the government recognises that, they're talking about that.
So that gas is cheap, it's not the market dictating that, it's artificially cheap. So that's why people are thinking, well, hang on, why should I leave a gas boiler? It's really cheap. How do we fix that? It's a really complex problem on a national, international kind of regulatory basis. How do we fix those markets that are being heavily subsidised at the minute? There's so many jobs involved.
It's definitely a challenge that the government needs to consider what the right solution is, but I think there's general recognition that a solution is required there. The final mechanism that they land on for solving that, will be decided, over, of course, hopefully a relatively short space of time. But an adjustment there is necessary. In the meantime, using our tariffs, as we've described earlier, you can run a heat pump at cost parity with a gas boiler with a degree of optimisation and flexibility in the system.
And what we've also looked in this centre is that you're looking at solar, battery systems, vehicle-to-grid systems. And obviously, with all those techs combined, I presume that the overall cost of running the heat pump just comes down again. And I presume using a mixture of those technologies, we hit price parity even now with gas?
Definitely, that's right. You can optimise the use of your heat pump to be parable. We've looked at customers of ours that have got heat pumps and what it's costing them to run over a period of time, and we've seen customers that have, I say, adjusted the running of their heat pump to be parable with the heating cost of a gas boiler. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about storage and how that integrates as well, because a lot of our audience are interested in home storage and using cars as well. Of course, you can, if you want, have a Leaf or a Chatamo car that will take energy out of that car. Is that something that forms part of the solution for people who want to go all in on this? Like, do they need vehicle to grid? Is it kind of a nice experiment at the minute? Where are you on that?
We've been heavily involved in a vehicle to grid trial in the UK, as you well know, and we've rolled out a number of vehicle to grid chargers that are being actively tested and trialled by our participants right now. I think it's got a really exciting opportunity to help solve the demands on the grid and levelise that to periods where perhaps there's not as much renewables on the grid that we would like. It's another source of flexible energy use, and you can store enough power in your car to provide export at the periods in time when the grid's particularly carbon intensive. The price might be quite high, and vice versa. You can charge your car at times when the grid is very, very green and the price is low, as I know you've experienced yourself.
Yeah, and so, but that's interesting, right? I thought that I was going into this for green reasons, like my whole interest in finding a company that would sell me renewable energy. I thought I was being green. Yeah. Ultimately, I think we're all, as the human race, I believe we operate in our own self-interest fundamentally. Like, I want to do the right thing for my future generations and the society. I get all that, and I do want to. Yep. But ultimately, if I've got more pounds in my pocket and I can still afford to live, heat my house, feed my family, that makes a real difference to me. And so that seems to be the key. It's like, I did get a price, a long time ago, on a heat pump, £10,000-12,000 for my house. As much as I'm into this technology, I'm just not going to do that. But the key is getting the price for these down, right?
Absolutely. And as I say, to the point where if your gas boiler breaks, which it will at some point during its life, your default decision is not just to have another gas boiler installed. And we need to be in a position where that decision is viable for most people in the UK, and that does mean bringing the price down, and that's a relentless part of our we're relentlessly determined to do that, and we are doing that already. So the government subsidy scheme will help in the short term. Longer term, economies of scale and optimisation will mean that we can achieve that without subsidies.
One of the things I love talking about EVs and this technology is it's very fast moving. Now, we're standing next to these because it made a nice shot, by the way, but what is over there are some much smaller units. So not only is the price coming down, but what's the pace of technology? Because there are some really, much smaller versions than this just around the corner. How small can they get?
The interesting thing is the design of a heat pump, for me, doesn't look particularly well thought through at the moment. It's not the most beautiful thing that you'd kind of want to put on.
Right. They're a little bit industrial at the moment. It's probably a fair way of putting it.
It's functional, it does a job, it's not particularly beautiful to look at. There are lots of things that we can do. We can talk about how you optimise the size of a heat pump for the particular application. A smaller property needs a smaller heat pump, and you can, as we bring the size down, you can think about different ways to design that. You can think about different ways to design a heat pump of that size currently, and we've got cylindrical heat pumps that already exist that people site a little way down the garden. They're completely out of your sight. There's lots that can be done. I think fundamentally we need a larger market. We need more people to be thinking about adopting heat pumps, more stimulus to create more incentives to try and think about design and size and function and optimization. All of those things will naturally come as we kind of drive demand and build a bigger market for the adoption of heat pumps.
So this research centre, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's world of its, it's the first in the world of its kind of at the moment. What you're doing here, the way you're training engineers, the schemes you're going through. I mean, how many engineers are you planning to get fully trained here, Barry?
Yeah, I think this is fairly unique in the breadth of what it covers and the way that we do that. We can train 1,000 engineers a year here, which is a significant number of heat pump engineers that can come through this centre.
And back to price parity before, we're talking about gas prices being artificially low with levy. But obviously in April we have another thing that's going to happen, which is the government price cap on gas and electricity is more than likely going to go up. I mean, as we record this, price levels wholesale are through the roof. Do you reckon that price cap coming off might bring gas to a more parity level with electric Do you think it might mean that there's a bit more interest in it? Obviously in April you've got the grant, you've got the possible price cap. Is it going to be more of an interest by then?
There's a number of external factors at the moment that are contributing towards the decision-making process to move to low-carbon heating versus, burning fossil fuels. Prices, running costs are part of that. General awareness about the impactfulness of, fossil fuels and using fossil fuel boilers has on the climate, is very well understood as well. So I think, I don't think there's one particular thing in of itself that is going to suddenly stimulate the market. There's a range of factors and a range of things that need to come together before we kind of get a full mass market rollout. Pricing is certainly part of that. The price at which we can install this technology is a part of that. The speed at which we can install it, the impactfulness of our proposition and our offer, and the service that we can provide to our customers. These are all kind of factors in the increasing demand for heat pumps. So I don't think there's one particular thing that's going to suddenly stimulate the market. I think it's it's a coming together of all of those factors, and it does feel like these things are starting to merge now, right? And we are getting to the point where very, very soon people will kind of be very aware of this. It will be affordable. It makes sense, and we can deploy it at scale. That feels imminent, which is really exciting.
Wow, I think it's going to be a lot of good news for people watching this and listening to this. I can't wait to have one of these, maybe not one of these, outside my home, but it's dead exciting, that electric life of the car, heating hot water, induction hob, etc., etc. I mean, I'm just completely all in. I'm so excited about it, and fascinating to come here today. John, if people want to find out more about what you're doing, where can people go to find out more?
Go to the Octopus Energy website. We talk about heat pumps and what we're doing there. That's the best source of information right now for most people. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, stick the kettle on in one of these houses. That's a cup of tea.
Yeah. All right. I'll make you a brew. See you in a bit.
Bye.
Well, thank you so much for watching today. If you are still watching towards the end of the video, hopefully you enjoyed that one. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast feed, Apple, Google, Spotify, and all the rest. And even on the YouTube channel now, we'll bring you as much as we possibly can in vision as well as in podcast form. I'd love to know what you thought of today's video and audio. Let me know. You can leave a comment below or email hello@evnewsdaily.com. And I'll catch you on the next one.